Okay, it looks like we're 2 minutes past the hour. We want to be respectful of everyone's time, and particularly considering Pat is joining us from New York. He's like, stay on it, slap it, whipping the lash on keeping us on time, which is great. Very excited to be here with these esteemed panelists. My name is Samson Williams. I'm the president of the Crowdfunding Professional Association. I'm really here to just champion and advocate the crowdfunding industry and the the crowdfunding industry and the expansion of it. And so in order to help us do that, we have some great folks today, Jenny Kassan, Pat Tracey, Mr. Michael Loyd from Dope Coffee, who just successfully finished raising $107,000 in his Reg CF raise, as well as, of course, Brian Belley, who keeps everyone honest and on track. And so I'm here to moderate, but first I want to kick it over to Jenny to give us a little bit of context to introduce Michael, and we can actually just jump into Michael's story and his journey of how he was able to successfully raise $107,000 using Reg CF. And later, I have some of my own personal questions about why $107,000, but I'll hold them. I may just drop them in the chat. So Jenny, let me turn the stage over to you.
Thank you so much, Samson. And yeah, it's interesting because I know it was really sad. We actually had to turn investors away from Dope Coffee because we could talk about the legal issues that caused his raise to be capped at $107,000, but there was huge demand to invest in Dope Coffee. But I'm Jenny Kassan. I'm an attorney. I've been working on investment crowdfunding for almost 15 years, even before the law went into effect that we know as the Jobs Act of 2012. There were ways that you could legally offer an investment opportunity to the public, but the Jobs Act of 2012 put some laws into effect that makes it easier. And Title III of the Jobs Act is regulation crowdfunding, and that actually didn't go into effect until 2016. And, just for those who don't know all the different kinds of crowdfunding, the difference between this type of crowdfunding that we're talking about today and other types of crowdfunding is that you're actually making an investment. So unlike platforms like GoFundMe and Indiegogo and Kickstarter, where you're maybe getting some kind of a gift or a recognition or a thank you, you're actually investing in a business. And the investment can be any kind of investment that the business chooses to offer. It could be stock in a corporation, it could be a loan to the business, it could be a convertible instrument. Anything where they're promising some kind of a financial return, that is an investment, and therefore highly regulated by the securities regulators. And so it is a little bit more involved to offer an investment opportunity to the general public than it is to offer like a t-shirt or a cooler or whatever. But I've been helping people raise money this way for almost 15 years. And when the new law went into effect, I was so excited because it does make it easier, much, much easier to raise without a lot of back and forth with regulators. And you can raise nationwide. This new law does preempt states from doing a lot of regulation on your offering. So that's super helpful. And I co-founded a platform called Crowdfund MainStreet. And Mike was he was, I think, our most successful offerer or issuer, as we say, on the platform so far. And so, yeah, we're really impressed with Mike, and we were only sad we did have to turn people away from investing in his amazing business. And by the way, I drink his coffee every day. It's really, really good. So, Mike.
Awesome. Do you want me to jump in here? Is this my intro time? Hey guys, so yeah, so my name is Michael Loyd. I'm the CEO, one of the co-founders of Dope Coffee Company. So I founded Dope Coffee 2 years ago with my wife, Shell. We have a love of coffee, a passion for coffee. We had run two community style like kiosk, drive-through kiosks for a few years before we started Dope Coffee. So we were very familiar with the world of coffee. But unfortunately in 2018, our coffee shops were hit by Hurricane Florence. I was just transitioning from the Marine Corps. I was active duty at the time. So our two shops get knocked offline, and really we're just sitting around trying to figure out, all right, what's the next step? We made the e-commerce pivot So we figured that out. And then the next step was, all right, but how do we grow and make money? So we pivoted the brand, got some good traction, and then immediately, right, you hit the wall of, well, I need capital to expand and grow. Fortunately, I got to hear a seminar or a class that Jenny gave as a part of a accelerator, a community wealth building accelerator that Dope Coffee was a part of in Atlanta. Heard her pitch about crowdfunding. I'd heard of it before. I'd done all the gift stuff that you talked about before, Jenny. Promised folks T-shirts and stickers, and it was cool. But I knew I needed to put real dollars in the bank fast. And so we hooked up with Jenny Kassan Consulting. We hooked up with Crowdfund MainStreet, and like you said, we were able to max out the I guess unverified or non-reviewed financial Reg CF raise. It has been amazing. So I don't want to get too far ahead of the panel here, but it wasn't just the capital. It was the marketing advantage. Folks take you serious when you're actively raising capital because they understand that you've complied with SEC requirements, right? All that stuff that you said. It brings a level of legitimacy, I think, for entrepreneurs to be able to go out into the world confidently, right? I mean, just the place I just left today, I fully leveraged the crowdfund against it, right? I'm rolling into a huge space rent-free for 90 days, and I'm probably going to stay rent-free a lot longer just because they take me serious and they know what I can offer now. And I think for entrepreneurs such as myself, folks of us who where access to capital might be an issue, we look at our dream, we look at our ideas as maybe not being as worthy because we can't pull them off. Now with some cash in the bank, I mean, I'm just rocking and rolling every single day, and then great ideas come to life, you know?
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna just ask you a question because I'm writing some notes here. Because part of it is you just said you got rent free for 90 days, which sounds fantastic, but it also sounds like a sign of the times in as much as COVID-19's role in impacting your business, particularly as a coffee business where you rely on walk-in traffic. But I did see you have a subscription. I believe you have a subscription model for your coffee. So my first question to you is, did the coronavirus have any impact on your decision to use crowdfunding or your decision to actually seek investors at this time?
So October is when we first linked up with Jenny and Michelle over at Crowdfund MainStreet. So we were already ready to go. We had 70% of the raise kind of put together. We had the details, and then early January we're getting the reports of COVID-19 hitting. And we didn't know a lot about the disease at the time, but once I kind of saw how the situation was evolving, right, I knew that was actually the best time because America stopped and they all went home, and we jumped online, like literally. So I'm in our headquarters right now. I was trying to do pop-up events in here. This was literally first 2-3 days of COVID, and I was like, all right, guys, cut this. Nobody's coming. We jumped right online and we started doing e-coffee breaks, right? So an electronic coffee break. We were able to just get a lot of traction early on. And what it showed me is that I was like, man, if we have everyone's attention, at least I can get my message to them, okay? But then I'm gonna tell you something else. And Jenny, this is something that Michelle told me. Actually, one of my other advisors said it to me, and then I kind of had a conversation with Michelle. She said, listen, like, money still exists in America, but a lot of the markets have completely dried up. They're unattractive, right? The bond market for, I think treasury bonds are, if they're not, I doubt they're negative, but they're almost at zero, right? And so all these folks, like for me, 107,000, right? That's a tiny pool of money. But if you're, if you got $1 million tied up somewhere and you're just, diverting that into, different types of investment mechanisms, I think there's a lot of money all of a sudden available for entrepreneurs like myself to tap into. Maybe I think these are the same bank VC type, financial manager, like those same types of funds now. I think those are starting to be pushed towards, Reg CF, right? Small business types. So I think coronavirus has, if anything, coronavirus disrupted traditional business models, right? Which, when you expose those types of flaws in their business model, what it does is it highlights how agile the entrepreneur, at least the startup entrepreneur, is, the one who's looking for Reg CF type capital, right? And so it's kind of just been a win-win-win all at once.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to hog the mic for one moment and jump in front of Pat and Jenny, because you said you had 70% of the raise sort of already put together in October before you decided to go on the platform. How does that look like? What was the logic behind that, or the strategy behind that?
We were already searching for capital, right? Like, I think there's a lot of folks out in America that are already looking. So you're on like you can read Jobs Act online, right? And you get that, oh, I can take investments, but then the actual mechanism of like, so how do I get that $2,000 in my bank account and not get tripped up by the laws and the SEC? And so I was already doing a 504 private raise. Which is where I learned how terrible I was doing with complying with the SEC, right? And so I had a lot of stuff there. I'd already put the pitch deck together. Had already kind of done what I thought use approach. All these little things. I think a lot of people kind of have scratched out on a napkin what they're looking for, right? They don't know how to turn it into a 10 slider, how to turn it into a, maybe a 2-3 year projection set of plans. Like it's those little things. And so we were close, but we couldn't cobble it all together. I contracted with Jenny to really walk us through and fast track us through that process, and they did. And like I said, I learned a whole new language, right, along the way. I wouldn't have said any of the stuff that I'm saying to you right now, but now that I can say it, like it's a set of tools.
Okay, no, that's super cool, because you say you started off doing a Reg D, brought up your educational level, your awareness of what was happening. And I like the fact that I think it's really important, because even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, much like we have your attention now on this webcast, he said he had the people's attention because your e-coffee breaks, which was a great idea. And now it's like, how do you turn that attention into revenue? And I was looking on Crowdfund MainStreet at some of your documents. So you raised $107,000 from 86 investors, comes out to about $1,200 a piece. But one of the other things you mentioned, and maybe this is why you picked a convertible note, if you put that same $1,000 in the bank, you're getting 0 interest rates. And so maybe you can share, like, why did you pick a convertible note? Is that like why? Yeah,
so I mean, that's kind of a multi-risk calculation on my part. When you look at the types of securities that you can offer, I think the convertible note hits the sweet spot for us. So I looked at a lot of the other offerings that were out there, whether on Crowdfund, MainStreet, Fundable, Nextseed. I looked at all the platforms to see what folks are offering, and what I noticed is like folks. It's actually from a Drake song. It says basically, when you give your buddy a piece, watch how hard they go for you, right? So when you're offering equity, see, I didn't just think that I was about to get 86 investors. That's not actually what I wanted. I wanted 86 investors who were ready to scream and shout my message, right? And so like a revenue share, that's cool, but that's kind of almost like a contractual relationship that has a predetermined lifespan, right? The folks that got on board with us with Dope Coffee, like I call them family, right? Like, no, we're here for the duration of this thing. If I am successful, you're successful. And if you can't tell, I'm kind of crazy. So I'm hoping that they bank on that and go like, hey, no, this guy wants to take it big. And if I back that, then he's going to share that, right? Proportionally back with me, which you don't get with some of the other offers. I think it's slightly more enticing.
Awesome. Because I love the fact that you picked up 86 marketers and 86 fans. And so I'm gonna let one of the other panelists ask some questions. But I think it's interesting that you made this, when you made your transition from the Marine Corps to set up your own small business, because I think we had this conversation where in Title VII of the Jobs Act, where we're actually the SEC supposed to be doing outreach to servicemen and women to inform them about this option of crowdfunding in order to help them start and grow their businesses. Because, Dope Coffee sounds like a real Main Street business that is going to be, and I think that the focus on Main Street businesses is great, because as we start to recover from the pandemic, you're going to use the internet, everyone's online. I think that warm intros in the past to VCs is going to fall a little bit, because now folks like yourself, you can actively engage your community and say, okay, here's my business, here's what I want to do, and give them the opportunity to be a fan of your business. So I'm going to let one of the other panelists ask a question because I have like 4 or 5 other questions.
Yeah, well, I would just love to hear, Mike, what was your largest investment? And what was your minimum investment? What was your largest investment? And also, did most of your investments come from the Atlanta area, or did they come from all over the country, or how did that work?
Yes, so the largest investment was $30K. That came through my alumni network. So just activity on LinkedIn that led, my kind of alumni network and alumni base to go, all right, there's a guy from our school who's doing this coffee company. Let's see what it's about. Minimum investment was $250. And that was important to me. I kind of think we're going to do some more fundraising. I think the minimum will be a little bit higher, but regardless, I think Dope Coffee is going to return back to the crowdfund, model soon and open it up again at that $250 minimum. Because really what happened, so like my sister invested in our crowdfund, my niece invested in our crowdfund, my mom invested, right? There was really no mechanism for them to do that before. So that minimum of 250 was, it really made it accessible. And if you see what Dope Coffee is, I mean, we got great coffee, but we're also about an economic revolution, right? And so in order to do that, you have to, so I have an education background as well. So I didn't want to just go through this process. I want to impart some knowledge on others. Now folks in my family know what investment crowdfunding is about, right? And so it's just like my sister runs her own CPG brand and she wants to, raise capital now. And I'm like, yes, that's the point. That's what it's about.
Nice. I love it because I just wrote a note that the platform is the mechanism for community investing, which is super helpful. Particularly, I think that a coffee shop is like ideal for community investment. And last point, I love the fact that you reached out and got $30K from your alumni network. I hadn't even been thinking about like, oh yeah, I should go to Florida State. Sorry, I have to do this every time I say Florida State, and hit them up for some money. But I'm gonna let Pat ask his questions. Stop hogging the mic.
Yeah, can I ask one? Hi, Michael, Pat. Yeah, I'm very excited for you and for the prospects because I think the very powerful thing that Dope Coffee has going for it is as you take these investors on, you mentioned it before, they become brand ambassadors. And I think even the people that tried to invest but were rejected are people that, at least you have who they are, and they could be great marketing prospects for you as well. And I was just, curious, as you go forward, what type of dynamic do you see as far as, offering, more customers, shares, because do you have like standalone stores? Is that the way I'm not familiar with the company?
So actually right now we're just e-commerce.
Okay.
We don't have any storefronts yet, but we're getting ready to open them.
All right. Yeah. Because I was just thinking that, it's a very powerful thing, where, a lot of people say, hey, let's order some coffee. And then, the Dope Coffee, like your friends say, well, you got to order Dope Coffee. Well, why? Because I'm a shareholder, because they're really invested in you. And I think that's a very powerful message. And I find it very exciting. So I was just curious for the future capital raises, what were you maybe planning on maybe approaching more like a Reg A approach, make it, like a deeper type approach? Is that what you were thinking about?
So we have a couple steps between, doing like the Reg A. What I'm actually thinking, so Jenny, I was actually talking to Michelle. We got a call tomorrow, as a matter of fact, about coming back to the platform and doing, hitting the Reg CF again.
Don't announce that publicly yet.
Oh, you can't. Gotcha. So we can't talk about that. Yeah. So we have a lot of things that we're working on.
Things could happen in the future that we're not going to talk about right now.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So here's what I will tell you then. The democratization of capital and the opportunity to invest is, I look at Dope Coffee, when I look at our opportunity for growth in front of us, I just think I'm not against the financial, institutions as they exist. It's just that they haven't necessarily been here to support communities that already don't benefit from being included with them. And so I really look at Dope Coffee as being a pioneer in not necessarily rejecting that form of capital, but being intentional about where we go and get our money. And if we can stand on that and be very public, I see this as being a company that can be supported by the public throughout. I mean, I get it. There's going to come a certain point where, you know, we're gonna need larger sums of money all at once, right? But we're not there yet. And I think I understand the continuum enough to say, like, hey, probably for the next 2 years, we can go to the public and build that, you know, that the trust and confidence with the public through the business, right? Through the fundraising mechanisms, right? I think because you got to open the books up, right? You got to show folks exactly what it is, and it just honesty breeds a lot of cohesion and synergy, I think, you know.
No, that's super interesting. I have a couple more questions about that, but I think that when we look at the future of capital, particularly if you're going to come back in the future to use some type of regulations, I know there's some hot topics about new regs that are coming down the pipeline, and maybe Jenny could give us a little bit of color on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're asking about that because it is super frustrating that when someone is possibly planning to raise money under regulation crowdfunding, they're not allowed to talk about that unless they've already filed the Form C. And the Form C, it's like a 60-hour process to prepare it. You generally do need a lawyer to help you with it. If you're going to do it right, it's a big deal. So you're going to probably be spending a fair amount of money before you can even tell anyone that you're thinking about raising money. And so there is a potential change in the rules that's coming up. It was announced by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Unfortunately, we don't know when it's going to happen, and there are some efforts in Congress to slow it down or stop it. So it's not currently the law, but we're hoping that it happens soon. And there's a few things that are going to happen hopefully, if this new proposed, these rule changes go into effect. So number one is you would be able to do what they call testing the waters. So you would be able to tell whoever you want, publicly announce it, talk to anyone you can think of about the fact that you're thinking about raising money under regulation crowdfunding. So that would be great, because that way you can start to figure out, would there be interest in this before you spend a ton of money on doing your filing. Another thing is right now, if you raise up to $107,000, you don't have to get reviewed financials, which is why Mike capped his raise at that. And you can raise up to $1,070,000, and that's the cap per year. So the SEC is looking at raising those caps possibly to a total raise of $5 million. And I think there may be potentially an increase in the amount you can raise without having to get reviewed financials. And reviewed financials are prepared by an independent CPA and cost a few $1,000s. Also, right now there are caps. There are per investor caps, and those caps apply whether your investors are accredited or not. So we have had some situations, unfortunately, where someone wanted to invest a large amount in one of our companies and they couldn't because of the caps. So they're looking at getting rid of that and also increasing the caps for all investors, which would be great. What else? I think another thing is oh yeah, go ahead.
Did you say that they were going to change the definition of an accredited investor?
Oh, so that is a separate thing. That is not a regulation crowdfunding thing, but there's definitely talk about changing the definition of an accredited investor. But I think right now that's kind of minimal. They're just looking at maybe adding people who have certain securities licenses to the definition of accredited investor. So just so people know, accredited investor is someone with at least $1 million in net worth, excluding their primary residence, or 200,000 in annual income. And it's somewhere between 5 and 10% of the population of the US. There is also a proposal to create something called a crowdfunding vehicle, which would allow you to raise money into a separate entity that would then be a single shareholder on your cap table. That there's some issues with that piece of the proposal that might make it not super friendly, but for some people that would be helpful. There is also talk about eliminating the use of SAFE, Simple Agreement for Future Equity. because there's a feeling that that investors don't understand how risky those investments are. So those are the main proposed changes to regulation crowdfunding. There are some other proposed changes for other securities rules that I won't go into, but yeah, we're super excited about those. It was unfortunate when we found out that there are some people in Congress trying to slow that down or stop it. So if you can send a message to your representative in Congress and your senator to say, hey, we really want to see these changes, that would be great. And of course, Crowdfunding Professional Association is doing what we can to advocate for those to go into effect.
No, Jenny, thank you for that overview of the new regs that are coming down the pipeline, because I understand the first rule of Fight Club is that we can't talk about crowdfunding at Fight Club, which is cool. So Michael, I have a bunch of crowdfunding questions, but Jenny will cut me off or mute me. So I'm not going to ask you them. Instead, I'm going to ask you, when you did your raise, did you see an increase in sales for your
Absolutely.
coffee?
Yeah, that's why I said I think, and I'd actually read this before. I forget what site I was on. It talked. So this is when I was doing like gift-based or reward-based crowdfunding. It talked about how crowdfunding was the best marketing tool, right? And so definitely saw a huge uptick in our sales. That, you know, first, so if you're investing in us, then most likely you're buying coffee from us. But then you get the friends and family word of mouth bump. I think that's actually what's sustaining us right now. We actually turned all forms of advertising off because sales grew so fast. We didn't have the infrastructure in the background to fulfill all those orders. So we got about 4 weeks behind. It was great. It was great. You know, we did a great month for us. Our highest revenue generating month, which was 48K. That was last month. So that was really good. And that's kind of been the wave that we've been riding. So yeah, a good bump. The bump that I've seen that I didn't expect was the B2B bump. Because I think what's happening now is that since real people are drinking and consuming our products, they also go into the workplace, right? And so now hotels and just different establishments are starting to order from us, and we don't really have a big outreach program right now on the B2C side, which we're about to kick up into full gear though.
I love it. I love it. I tell people crowdfunding is for real people because the real people have revenue because customers have more money than investors. That's crazy.
Bingo, right?
And how did it help your brand? Your sales went up, but did the crowdfunding help your brand at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. To be very honest, I've actually leveraged the success of the crowdfund for our brand. So you can't talk a lot about crowdfunding while you're in the middle of it, but when you're done, you can definitely tell everybody what you did. And we've been telling everyone, right? We've run a few press releases on the fact that we, successfully were able to raise on the platform. In fact, and I don't know, I don't want to get too far off, but since we are talking about crowdfunding, one of the things that I've done is to leverage the success of Dope Coffee's raised to help find other brands like myself and bring them to the platform. So I've actually launched my own accelerator. It's called Black Sheep. I want you to think about it like this. That period of time that I went through before I met Jenny, I was lost and floating, right? I'm not trying to replace what Jenny does or what the crowdfunding platform does. What I want to become is an aggregator and accelerate folks through that process. Like, hey, look, you got a business, you got a brand. I'm not here to help you with your packaging or any of that stuff. It's like, but you need to get your mindset from the point of I'm struggling to find capital to quickly understanding this is a way, and then to be able to deploy a campaign, right? Or at least to show up to the folks like Jenny and Michelle ready to deploy a campaign. So yeah, that's really what I see here.
Awesome. So I know if people go to realdope.coffee, they can find out about your realdope.coffee. But where can they find out more information about Black Sheep?
Yeah, so if you just type Black Sheep Accelerator in Google, I'm really big on the web. That's why I do e-commerce. So if you just type any of this stuff in, you're gonna find it. Here's a little bit more kind of letting the veil down on myself is that, so I'm also a hip hop artist. I rap a lot about economics, access to capital, all this thing. This same phone call I would just turn it into lyrics in a track, right? This same Zoom call. And so we do a lot of hip hop education or entrepreneur and really just I don't even ever know what you call it. It's not access to capital. It's the mindset to understand how capital works. I do that a lot. So yeah, you can find Black Sheep Accelerator. We want to focus on CPG brands initially. The thing you said about crowdfunding is for real people. Well, what happens is when you have a tangible product, and Michelle really let me in on this. She said, if you have a tangible product, your customers and investors will really get excited because it's something that they can interact with and see and hold. And so, while this was all happening, I was going through the accelerator here in Atlanta, seeing all of these really talented entrepreneurs make all these great products. A lot of them were selling 10 times more than I could even dream of selling, got great revenues, but still just facing such a hurdle in terms of how do I take the next step. So I don't think that in America, we don't have to look far to find the folks who really need the boost. I don't think we have to look far to find the people who are willing to put the work in either for crowdfunding. I'm in Atlanta. Like, this is an entrepreneurial haven, and I mean, just today alone, I was outside at a pop-up, listening to a guy talk about, he's doing $3K a day out of his temporary space. He's like, but I need more money and I have no clue. I'm like, have you ever heard of crowdfunding? He says, no. I'm like, dude, you're going to do 300K in revenue this year. That's more than what you need to substantiate raising capital. So I gave him my card and we're talking, and I talked to him about Black Sheep, right? It's like, hey man, you're the guy, trust me, you're the black, and I call it Black Sheep because of that, right? Like, a sheep is a sheep is a sheep. But then there's these sheep that for whatever reason, they look a little different. And so they're not getting access to the same opportunities, right? Let's find them, identify them. And for me, I just want to hand them over to Jenny. I'm not actually in that part of but I'm good at finding folks, right? And building the excitement and kind of, like I said, I have an education background. So I'm excited to be on this call because, I want to be around crowdfunding folks, right? We're ushering in a new wave of how you can break the wealth gap, really. And so that's a lot of things, like, this is where it comes from for me, right? Black Sheep is a part of break the wealth gap, right? It's like, I recognize this as a tool, right? To just unlock futures for people, man. It's like, my life has been, completely flipped around, completely flipped around through one raise.
I love it. I love it. No, because part of this is we're talking about how COVID-19 is impacting businesses. But even though we're going through a pandemic and an economic adjustment, there's still these opportunities for us to make moves. And so you call them Black Sheep. I call them opportunities for exponential growth, because you're a man who's doing 300,000 from a booth. It's like, you're not going to get this hockey stick opportunity just going to your traditional route. And so where some people might not think, hey, why $100,000? It's like, well, that's that seed. I tell people, it's like babies. You gotta learn how to crawl before you can run. And so it's good to hear that you're out there looking for these other MainStreet businesses. Because when I talk about crowdfunding, I like to focus on MainStreet businesses, because I believe your wife and your brother are also involved in your business as well. And so I love these MainStreet businesses, because part of it, I think that due to COVID-19 and the amount of just debt the government has issued, we'll have a lot more of these zombie companies. Zombie companies meaning they're only kept around because they're just saddled with debt. And so the savvy investor will be looking for these quote unquote micro investment opportunities of 30K, where they can say, okay, I can put 30K into this business, and here's a potential projection for it over the next decade, versus putting 30K into a zombie business and it's like, I don't know how that's going to turn out. So I love the knowledge that you're putting down. I'm going to let one of our other panelists ask a question before I ask.
I'll jump in here. We did have a couple questions actually come in from the audience, so I figure we could take a couple of these. So one for you, Mike, is how does funding equate to compensation for the founders so that they can keep going on their vision product? So I think what this idea is maybe getting at is, can you talk a little bit about like how you thought about how you were going to use the proceeds from the crowdfunding campaign and maybe what some of those options are?
Yeah, so this is a very good way to tie all this together. So Samson, you talked about the amount, 100K, and you talked about gaining some competency with that level of funds. So here's the way I'll answer that question. I believe the question also was, it talked about the founders, right? And how the founders see, all right, so So my thoughts as 107K, I don't look at any of that as being capital that I can use to compensate myself in the business, right? It's seed capital. It's capital that we earmark specifically for manufacturing and marketing, okay? The two things that we need to be able to grow, right? We have to build our audience, and then we have to be able to supply that demand. So I tried to raise money from some private equity guys, and they laughed at me because they're like, well, tell me about your manufacturing capability. And I couldn't say anything, right? It's like, I do everything out of my garage, and there was no legitimate plan. When I started realizing to use those two words more so, marketing and manufacturing, it let folks know that I was just very serious about where their dollars were going to go. I don't think people want to see you earmarking dollars for your own pockets, right? I still haven't taken a paycheck yet. You know, that's coming. Hopefully we got to bring some more cash in, and I'll get a paycheck here soon, Jenny. And, but yeah, I think you need to be focusing first and foremost on how you're going to deploy the capital. I have some other friends, they're raising capital right now. They have all the capital that they raised still in the bank. I was like, dude, you have to spend it. And you have to spend most of it, because if you don't spend it, you're not using it to grow. So just start with the end in mind. I knew, so on the marketing side, I knew that I wanted to build a very influential brand across the country. So for me, I buy digital cameras, lights, computers for, editing to tell our story. Someone else may need, inventory, right? But you just got to really know where you're going at the beginning. Don't be afraid to stake it out, and also don't be afraid to spend money, because I think that's the most dangerous. It's like both sides of the house. Since you don't have cash, you hoard everything you get, and then consequently, right, you don't grow. So yeah, use of proceeds. Think of the end at the beginning, and focus really on what cash you need, right? Like, I came into the game saying I wanted to raise 30K. And then I realized that if I raised 30K, that would be just enough to put me out of business in 6 months, right? Because I'd go do all this stuff and die. So pick a number, be comfortable saying that I'm spending money. Yeah, that's really the mindset. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I hope it did.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I think maybe a follow-up that I would kind of have to that, but when you're thinking about, doing a campaign, can you maybe talk about how you, after you get all these investors on board, right? You're bringing them on, they're aligned with your long-term vision. What are some different ways you've either used or think about using them? I say that it sounds kind of negative, but like actually, leveraging those investors, whether it's getting ideas or more than just, having them on your cap table. What are some other ways that these issuers can benefit from having those investors on board?
I'm going to say they work for you. Okay. Once you invest in my company, you work for me. I send emails all the time asking them to help source deals, find deals. Like, hey, bro, you want to see your dollar grow? Help me link up this drink deal really quick, and you're just going to watch it. You got to be. So my advisor, his name is Shafi, great guy, told me a really good piece of advice, and I think this is why entrepreneurs struggle. He said, you have to get comfortable using people until they tell you no, right? And that's such a hard thing to swallow, right? Because I don't want to ask anybody for help. I certainly don't want to impose on anyone, and I don't want to come across as taking advantage of someone else, right? But when I thought about myself in the reverse, I'm like, dude, I've helped everyone open their business. I've spent hours volunteering and donating, giving my time away. There's nothing wrong with being on the other side of that and asking for that help. And then even now, the reason I ask for 90 days free rent is because I need as much help as I can, right? And there's nothing wrong with being in that position.
One other question actually that came in from the audience. This is, a little more specific to maybe the way that you positioned yourself in the brand, but they're asking, did Michael feel that your name was risky, having dope in, the dope coffee name, or any potential negative connotations that might come with that?
It wasn't risky. I picked the name so the question could get asked just like that, right? So if you don't stand somewhere, you're nowhere. I know, so I'm a history major, like this is what I studied for undergrad, right? So I just look at America right now, and so I don't want to turn this into a big political, socioeconomic call here, but for a brand to exist in 2020, certainly at a time where America is so polarized, right, in all those different ways that I just said, you have to pick a position. In fact, so there's another brand called Black Rifle Coffee Company that I heavily modeled dope coffee off of. Their statement says, we sell coffee to conservatives who love America, right? They're close to a $200 million brand, and they got right to the point, right? I am not a conservative, right? I love America, and I am not included in their mission statement. That's not going to stop them from becoming a very successful company. And so dope coffee, I picked the word first. The longer you stick around dope, you'll get why I picked the word. I picked the word because things can be dope, but very specifically because drugs, both the consumption and the war on drugs decimated Black America, right? And so own that heritage, stick it right out front, and make people uncomfortable. It's fine. Like, it's fine for consumers to be uncomfortable, because if you make one group of consumers uncomfortable, you made the other group really comfortable, and then they support you. When I use a name like dope, I typically get a few different reactions. Most folks are just like, right on, that's really dope, and they put a couple expletives in it, right? If it's not that, they give me the look like, do you know that the word dope could be bad? It's like, I grew up in it. I get it. I totally get it. I want you to get it. That's why I put the word right on the front and stuck it in your face, right? So yeah, it's absolutely, it's to evoke that emotional response. So now that you like, your awareness has been heightened, we can have this other conversation that I want to have about access, right? About equality, about economic justice, right? There's so many things that we can talk about behind this brand if we can just get you to, it's kind of like Instagram. You just scroll and scroll and scroll. Something has to make you stop. The word dope coffee makes you stop. And that's why I picked it, frankly.
I love it. I'm writing a note here because I think that it goes to building your brand, because your brand is worth everybody's got coffee, right? So what makes you choose dope coffee? Well, it has a brand. You have some type of, you stand for something. And so I forget his name. I wrote down Deadpool. I don't know what Deadpool's real name is, but from Aviation Gin, he just sold his gin company. He's some actor. He played in the movie Deadpool. But part of the reason that made his Aviation Gin worth $600 odd million is the brand. And so if you don't have a brand and you don't have brand ambassadors, people who stand for something, then you're just another. You sell alcoholic beverage. People have a choice. And so the same thing with the coffee, I feel like. I think that's really keen. I love it.
Look, Samson, let me add something to that really quick. Here's why. My first brand, those wonderful coffee shops that I mentioned, they were called Solar Cafe. Guess how many people beat my door down to get some Solar Cafe?
5.
Not many. Yeah, you go. Jenny, you're drinking the roast that I came up with and served every day at Solar Cafe. You see my point? It's like, it just evoked a different response, right?
I love it. Now you're building the brand. I think we have a question over here. I'll let Brian read out this question from the chat.
Yeah, so another question that came in, considering you already imply in the name, have you considered a flavor that incorporates hemp extracts? So not THC, but all the good parts. If so, we have someone on the call and the chairman of the board at the CfPA, I think, that would like to talk with you.
Absolutely. We actually have the roast. We developed it. We're working out a pay processor issue right now because our Shopify processor, depending on which state you sell in, we're just trying to figure out the compliance piece right now. And then we'll get our CBD hemp, derived products back on the market. I'm a huge fan. I'm a veteran. I struggled a lot with PTSD. In fact, this whole brand, if you really start unpacking it, a lot of it is just my kind of emotional healing from that. And CBD, like, I'm a big advocate of it. So because the brand should also bring a sense of calming, right? And I could go in deep on that. But yeah, absolutely is the answer.
I love it. Because everything you're saying, I'm putting down and picking up. Because for me, particularly at this moment, when we look at Circle K, 7-Eleven, the green coffee, what is that, Starbucks, we see all these national brands that are suffering because, they have to maintain this super expensive real estate, that super expensive infrastructure, but their walk-in customers, particularly now that the future of work is apparently remote, and so that cuts down on their foot traffic. And so I just in general for for the crowdfunding ecosystem, I see there a shift away from big box brands and chains, particularly for coffee, down to local restaurants or regional restaurants, so that, you know, you might own all of the Southeast United States because, you know, you're just dope coffee until, of course, Scott McIntyre and you talk about the hemp products, and then you become a national brand. But I think that's just a good evolution for any brand to just slowly grow. And I know we can't talk about your next crowdfunding offering, but I really want to, because I could see where, like, yeah, they're building momentum. They're building momentum. Michael, is there any other, we've talked about many of the positive effects. What were the biggest hurdles, the biggest challenges, your lesson learned where you're like, oh, next go around, this is that one thing I'm going to do better?
Sorry, I'm just laughing. I got a whole list. Right. To be more assertive. Here's the thing. When you're I liken investment to selling. It's the same thing, right? Two people are coming to the market for an exchange of value, right? They see something in dope coffee. I see cash and maybe access to networks. I would say the best piece of advice would be, in those situations, don't look at yourself as the small business that you are, the startup business that you are. Look at yourself for who you want to be, right? I visualize, so to go back to the answer about dope coffee, the name, right? So we are heavily hip hop based. Okay, we're publishing an album as a company in 40 days. Okay, we have to show up and be able to say that to an investor and be confident that when I say that, that my lack of confidence doesn't make it seem like I have no idea what it means to say I'm a coffee company distributing music, okay? Because that's as founders, we have crazy ideas like these, okay? And if you don't position yourself in a way that lets that vision come alive, you will never close those deals. So yeah, I spent probably a year and a half, maybe a year in that 504 offering, stumbling through telling people what I'm going to do. Another thing that I would say, don't get hung up on the projections, right? I get it that you got the big SEC hanging over your shoulders, but here's what I think happens, especially to folks who are showing up to a crowdfund. You don't even know what money is. And so you're scared to say, yeah, I can make $2 million. Like, I was terrified to say that. I know it in my head I can do it because I already made $1 million, but I didn't know how to put that on paper in a way that said, yeah, but I also see $25 million coming, right? Just being comfortable with your future and then articulating your point from that vantage point, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. It does. So for all of you out there listening and learning from Michael Loyd about the future of real dope coffee, number one, have a tangible product, right? So people can buy it. Number two, be more assertive. And number three, engage your community. And because he said it, I'm including the alumni community because I can't think of anything more important than, where did you go to undergrad at, Michael?
Wake Forest University in North Carolina.
Oh, well, never mind. If you went to Wake Forest, it doesn't matter.
Well, I heard you talking about the Seminoles down there. So, and it look even better for you. I actually started my first 2 years at the University of Florida. So,
or your Gator.
There you go.
That's so crazy.
Can I just jump in and say, you don't necessarily have to have a tangible product to have success with crowdfunding. We have had some clients, and even I've raised a few times for like a consulting business. So it's very possible. Obviously, having a tangible product can really help, but I don't want anyone to think that if you're like a coaching business, a consulting business, real estate business, whatever it is, B2B, I raised for B2B, it's very possible as well.
That is a very good point. Go on, Michael.
Yeah, I want to qualify that statement a little bit as well, because this is where, because I plan on raising capital for some non-CPG things, right? Technology-based, etc. I think it's a great tool for anyone. really my point with that is what happens, there's a lot of very small scale manufacturers who are scared. And so that I'm saying, hey, probably for you more than anything, like this is a tool that you can use. Yeah, I think because what tends to happen is that if you're in the professional services world, you're already a little bit maybe more financially advanced. I'm talking to like the neighborhood corner hustler who's selling something at their store, and then like the guy that I talked to this morning, they have a biscuit. They make morning biscuit sandwiches, but then they also sell their frozen product through the mail, right? And so he's struggling to make the doors stay open on a daily basis. But I'm like, dude, you just need like a printer and a couple boxes, and then you can start shipping all over America. So yeah, I see. Yeah.
There's another really important point about that too. I've been talking to some manufacturers lately or producers of products that used to offshore their manufacturing to other countries, and they're finding it's getting harder and harder because of COVID. And so it's a really great opportunity to talk about reshoring manufacturing to the US. So if you're already manufacturing in the US, you actually might have some big advantages over the bigger brands that are trying to offshore, because it's just a lot of those factories are shut down. They're only taking the biggest brands. So yeah, reshoring manufacturing and production to the US, it's obviously also just a great time to be talking about, like, we need manufacturing jobs in the US, make things in the US. So yeah, I think that's a really great point and something that's going to resonate right now.
Yeah, and a lot, and especially, so you're talking about COVID, a lot of my investors, the first question that the savvy ones ask, what about your supply chain? Where's your supply chain? Where's it coming from? And I'm able to say now, Tennessee, California, Georgia, not China, not, Pakistan anymore. And that's something that I think is very important, right? Because if you're investing in me, you're hoping that 6 months from now, that product that I brought to market can stay at market, right? Because if the supply chain's cut off, then you're done.
And can I ask a question to the team here? I guess since we titled the program how COVID-19 is impacting the crowdfunding industry, this is, for Michael specifically and the rest of the panelists, hey, for the next 4 or 5, 6 months, what do y'all think is, we don't really know where the virus is going to go and if it's going to be a second wave and all that, but generally, Penny, for your thoughts on that topic. Samson, why don't we start with you and then we can work our way around.
Okay, well.
Samson, do you want to share those stats? Do you have those stats we were talking about?
Do I have them readily available? It is.
I can share them really, really quick. Because we did, we're on an email list where we get stats on crowdfunding, and amazingly enough, July was the biggest month ever for investment crowdfunding under regulation crowdfunding. So
yeah, I'm going to share my screen with everyone. Hopefully you can all see this. To Jenny's point, July, it was 137% increase in the number of offerings made in the month of July, which is actually really impressive, because I think even though we're in the moment of, also I should let you know, since we're showing it, this is from Crowdfund Capital Advisors, this gentleman, Woody Neese, he sends these out. I highly encourage you to Google them, Crowdfund Capital Advisors, get on their mailing list. So the highlight is that crowdfunding is up across the industry. I think that what COVID-19 has done is made more investors available, because it pushed everyone online. People are less focused on meeting VCs. They're more focused on meeting real people. And they're doing this through this online medium. So when Michael is able to get on his electronic coffee breaks, his e-coffee breaks, that's creating community, it's creating buzz, and then he figures out how to actually leverage that. The other thing on here, and I'm just scrolling through this very quickly, was the average raise. And I think this is the most important, because the average raise for July was $463,000, which is actually pretty good. And so,
you know what though? I think that is not the average raise. That's the average revenues.
Revenues.
I don't think, let's see. Yeah, that they looked at the revenues of the companies that were raising, and they noticed.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you for.
Yeah, I don't think they said what the average raise was in this message. Although
Last year, the average raise was like $263,000 in 2009. I'm
yeah.
sorry, 2019. I lost a decade since March. I apologize. So we're really excited to see what this means for the overall industry, because Michael, you're right there at $107,000. It means if you do another raise in the future, maybe you'll do it for a little bit more, depending upon the needs of your actual offering. So,
and can I just jump in with one more thing? I think another reason, my guess why another reason is for the increased number of people investing and the amounts people are investing in crowdfunding is that there's more and more skepticism about the stock market. So, most people, most retail investors, regular folks who make investments, they'll just stick their money in the stock market. But we have seen a stock market that is just so strange. No one understands what's going on. It's become completely decoupled from the reality of what's happening in our economy. There are businesses that have gone bankrupt that people are investing in using their own personal accounts. It's very scary, and a lot of people are expecting that to not continue to do so well. So I think that's another reason people are starting to say, maybe I should diversify a bit. Not that you necessarily would pull all your money out of the stock market, but put some money in businesses that are not listed on the stock market, and you might actually have a better chance of keeping your money and growing your money.
Yeah. So Pat, I'm going to conclude with 1 in 5 companies right now, publicly traded companies, are zombie companies, and people are going to be looking at that risk and thinking, I need to invest. I need to take my eggs out of this basket and put them in, as many baskets as possible. And this is where crowdfunding comes in. Particularly in the future, you can walk in, talk to Michael while you're getting your coffee. It's just better connection, different strategies. So I think that overall, you'll see people de-risk their portfolio by making smaller investments in Reg CS specific crowdfunding deals. So Jenny, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think I'm good. Just feel free to, I do have a newsletter that I send out every month about the general industry of creative capital raising. You can go to my website, jennykassan.com. Also, let's give a shout out to Crowdfunding Professional Association. How can people get involved with that?
By going to CfPA.org. And I really encourage people to check out the crowdfunding ecosystem, because there's about a dozen or so SMEs that if you have questions, that's the other Pat, to go back to your question about the future of COVID-19. Michael lives in Atlanta. Jenny lives in San Francisco. However, the internet connected them. And I think you'll see more businesses form this way, more advisors found, because again, it's, even though they're separated by a continent, they're still able to connect and do business. And so this is where you'll see more people turning to crowdfunding. And so if you go to the CfPA.org and click on the ecosystem, there's some informational videos and more information, as well as some SMEs that you can book their time to ask them those questions that are unique to your own business. Because also on the video library page, Brian has put a lot of great videos that give a general explanation of what crowdfunding is. We're probably going to post this one right there. That way later, when you go to book a specific SME's time, you can ask them the questions that are very specific to your unique raise. Reading a comment here, we'd be honored to have Michael's voice in leadership at the CfPA. That is a good idea. So Michael, we'll circle back to you, because part of it is having successfully raised money, you can speak definitively to say, here's some of my lessons learned, be more assertive. And then some of the other nuances. So we'll have to circle back on that. I think that's it for the day. Brian, do we have anything else we need to wrap up with?
I think I'm good if Pat and everyone else, and I just want to, thank Mike for his time and for sharing your experiences with everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all for joining. Visit us at the CfPA.org. And of course, it's realdope.coffee. Go order some. They've got a subscription model. Peace out.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.